who better to do so with than the excellent Ben Habib. Welcome to the show, Ben.
Good evening, Kevin. Good to see you.
Good to see you always. So you're of course chairman of the Great British PAC, a former deputy leader of Reform UK, but it's not Reform I want to talk about with you at this stage, but I do in a minute, because something happened on Thursday and Friday, something of a political earthquake. We need to talk about that and need to talk about the ramifications of what lies ahead, because it's not going to be easy. There's a rocky road ahead. We'll talk about that in a minute. But first, the Tories. I mean, it was a terrible night for Labour, obviously. Arguably an even worse night for the Tories. Obliterated, annihilated all over the country. They lost something like 650 council seats. They were barely
78.
678. They were barely in the running in Runcorn in the parliamentary by-election. So they have become kind of almost a sideshow, and they are in deep trouble. So we now hear, because they're obviously very, very upset or dissatisfied with Kemi Badenoch's performance so far. She's not laying a glove on anyone. She really is not working out. So they're thrashing around in their time-honoured fashion. Who can replace her? Obviously, the obvious replacement would be Robert Jenrick. But of course, guess what? They're talking about bringing back Boris Johnson. As I was just saying to Isabel Oakeshott, I find Boris Johnson very likeable, very charming, very entertaining. He's fun to have on the political stage. But as a Conservative, he's a non-starter. He's not a Conservative. He's a net zero nutter, loves net zero, couldn't care less about the migrant crisis, and was a very, very keen advocate of Stonewall and all their LGBTQ work. I mean, this man is not a Conservative. If they do make the mistake of bringing him back, it will be the mistake of their lives. I think they're arguably finished now. Bring back Boris and they're definitely finished. Would you agree?
I completely agree. Whatever the question is, Boris is not the answer. They're having clearly an existential crisis, but they've got to rediscover their Conservative roots. Boris, as you pointed out, is a liberal, basically. He was part of the sort of global liberal order, as I call it, the promotion of ideologies such as mass migration, multiculturalism, net zero, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm not going in any particular coherent order, but you get the picture. And Boris Johnson delivered this country to its knees. Remember, when he took over, our national debt was something like $1.5 trillion. By the time we left, our national debt was in excess of $2 trillion. When he took over, we were growing at about 2% per annum each year, with the exception of maybe a couple of years during the credit crunch of 2010 and so on. When he left, we've had nothing but anemic growth, I think significantly down to mass immigration of unskilled people. Boris Johnson was a disaster at every level. And of course, the mastermind subject, which exercises me, was leaving the European Union, taking back control to this country. Remember the expression, taking back control. The country would leave the EU as one United Kingdom. We would get Brexit done. He didn't do any of that either, actually. We left the institutions of the European Union, but we left Northern Ireland behind. We committed ourselves to alignment in state aid, competition, employment, environmental law. We signed up to the European arrest warrant. We committed our funding to the European Defence Fund. We committed to staying in the ECHR under the deal that he did with the European Union. Boris Johnson was a disaster at every single level. Let's not misunderstand that. And as much as I love his easygoing, beer drinking ability to communicate with
expensive red wine is what you're looking for there.
Probably, but he's one of those guys that you could just sit in a pub with and talk to for hours, and you'd never be bored. You'd never be in a dull moment. He's just a brilliant guy, and probably the best mayor of London ever. and certainly a hell of a lot better than the current incumbent. and but he's not the answer of the Conservative Party. What the Conservative Party need to find is their conservatism and splendid isolation. Examining your navel, believing that the world will eventually come right, is not a solution to the Conservative Party's woes. Kemi Badenoch needs to come out of the stalls. She needs to rediscover what it means to be a conservative, and then she needs to articulate that to the British people. She has been not ambiguous, she's been absent from the political battlefield since she took over as leader of the Conservative Party. We've been told that she's not going to tell us what her policies are. Well, if we don't know what her policies are, how can the nation judge the Conservative Party? Yeah. What does she stand for? Where is she? She said some great things, like she is concerned about the rate of demographic change in this country. She even said a couple of weeks ago, but it was completely drowned out because no one's listening, that she is in favor of the deportation of every single illegal migrant in this country, something which even Farage won't say. But no one's listening. Kemi needs to come out of the stalls. She needs to set down what it means to be a conservative, and then she needs to take the charge to the British people. And every week, she needs to have a new policy which will wow the British people, and she needs to commit to it. Yeah. But instead, she's back in her bunker. And I think tonight she's meeting the One Nation group of Tory MPs. But basically, the Boris Johnson lot, the Liberal Democrats, they should really leave the Tory party, join the Liberal Democrats.
You mean the non-Tory Tories, yeah.
The non-Tory Tories. And that's their problem. They've forgotten what it means to be conservative.
Well, Ben, but you see, this is exactly it. The reason Reform did so sensationally well at the end of the last week and now have one hell of a head of steam behind them, one hell of a momentum going for them, is because it's not because they're sort of a brand new party with a brand new set of ideas. The Conservatives left the Conservative property open and Reform moved in. Reform are what the Conservatives should be. If you say to Nigel Farage, I know you've got your problems with Farage, but I think you are still probably on board with the basic tenets of the Reform project. Yeah. If you say to Nigel Farage, what will you do about the ECHR? He says, leave it. What will you do about the migrant crisis? Solve it. What will you do about net zero? Cancel it.
The Conservatives have just left an open goal.
When you go to Kemi and the current remnants, the sad remnants of what used to be the magnificent Tory party, and you say, Kemi, what will you do about the ECHR? Well, I'll probably stay in it. I'm not sure because it's a lot more complex than people make out. What will you do about net zero? Oh, well, yes, we still like net zero. We're just not going to go at it quite so full fat as the Labour Party do, etc. You get these wishy-washy Lib Dem answers that Conservatives don't want, don't like, and they go, you know what, I need to find a party that gives me the right answers. And that's why they've defected. That's why they're going to Reform in their droves.
I completely agree. And Kemi may think that she's holding the party together, she's avoiding controversial issues, and therefore she's going to manage the process through to some kind of settled position. Actually, what she's doing is vacating the political battlefield, and there will be nothing to come back to. There will be nothing. It will be a barren land for the Conservative Party. She needs to discover her Conservative soul, and then she needs to take a few risks by articulating what it is she believes in, and she's got to carry the party and carry the people of this country. But it's not about Kemi or the Tories, or frankly about Reform. What this country desperately needs is a restoration of its constitution, its culture, and the values and principles that we stand for as we used to stand for as the United Kingdom. We need a restoration of the United Kingdom. We need to unpick 30 years of the liberal global order, the hijacking of our democracy, the extreme form of liberalism that we've been practicing. The British people absolutely know what is required. They just need someone to give them the ability to vote for it and then to deliver it. That's what they want. And Reform and Nigel Farage's persona absolutely capture that aspiration and that hope.
Well, let's talk about the reform after the break, but just to stick with the Tories, the decline and fall of the Tories for now. I mean, I do think they do need a new leader. I don't think she's got the stuff. I think she's proved herself to not really be up to the job. Obviously, Jenrick's on massive manoeuvres. But I'm not sure, you know, if they brought God Almighty in, that he could save the Tory party. I think we might be seeing the end of a long and glorious party, don't you think?
Another problem for the Conservative Party, and I think this might hoist it by its own petard. As reform has grown, it has taken those members of the Conservative Party that you might typically regard to be conservative. So what you're increasingly having now left behind in the Conservative Party's members are the kind of Liberal Democrat, One Nation, wet Tories. And so there, even though Jenrick may be the answer for the Tory party as a leader, the One Nation membership, increasingly One Nation, wet Liberal Democrat kind of form of membership, won't put him into office. And so the Tories are now in a really desperate position. The electorate last week sent an absolutely unambiguous message for the fourth time that they want conservatism. And when Nigel Farage says, you know, he appeals to the centre left, to the centre right, he's actually wrong in that. He's appealing to one aspect of the British people. The British people want their country restored. They want the United Kingdom having policies made for the British interest and for the people's interest. That's what it's nothing about left or right. Left or right is not the debate. And Kemi Badenoch hasn't appreciated that. And the membership of the Conservative Party increasingly is not going to reflect it. And so I think they may have reached a tipping point from which there is no return.
Check this out, Ben. This is in the last 3 hours that really sums up what we're both trying to articulate, that is that the reason the Conservative Party is dying a painful and slow death, actually it's quite a fast death at the moment, is because so many Conservative MPs have forgotten what the Tories are supposed to be.
They don't know.
So guess what's happened today? More than a dozen senior Tories, led by Kit Malthouse, have demanded in a letter to Keir Starmer today that he formally recognises Palestine as a state. That's senior Tory MPs. Now, you know, I don't want to get into the Palestine issue, but is that what Kit Malthouse thinks the people of Britain are energised about? What on earth do you think? This is a sort of lefty thing, isn't it?
This is not the salient issue.
The Tories shouldn't be calling for a Palestine state, should they?
No, and so someone in my office, actually, I'll send him a copy of this clip because I had this discussion with him today, said to me, Kit Malthouse is a Brexiteer, you know, he's sort of on the right-hand side, as it were, colloquial right-hand side of the Conservative Party, and I pointed him to this letter. And he said, well, you know, that doesn't completely put him out of the running of being, you know, like one of us. But in my view, it does. He's focusing on completely the wrong issue. No one in the United Kingdom, no one in the Shires, no one in the Red Wall that would typically vote Conservative is fretting about the Palestinian issue. What they're fretting about is the restoration of their country, the democracy in this country, the economic and cultural prosperity of this country. That's what people are fussing about.
And the bloody migrant crisis, for God's sake.
Well, that's part of it,
And by the way, you know, Conservatives should be supporting Israel. Not calling for the Palestinian state to be brought into being. It's just not conservative. It's ridiculous. I mean, what the hell do these people think they're doing? Stay where you are. Well, I'll tell you what they're doing. They're making the mistakes that their predecessors have made since they've since David Cameron came in. They're making the same mistakes that the Tories made for 14 disastrous years. Terrified of their own shadow, terrified to be right-wing, desperately worried about Labour, the rise of Labour, therefore turning themselves into Labour-like, going, oh yeah, net zero, yeah, let the migrants in, oh yeah, yeah. You know, they're the architects of their own demise because they've forgotten what it means to be Conservatives, and that's why they're dying.